we're going to be in a little bit of a pre-show at the moment. I want to be able to check and make sure that we're getting audio, that I look okay. So just, bear with us. If you're here, talk in the chat. I would love to hear you. Let me know that you can hear me. That would be an amazing thing in and of itself. Um, I have myself up on the YouTube app, but it doesn't show that I'm live. Up, there it goes. I came live. And yep, sure enough, I can hear myself, which is, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to make sure I could hear myself. I don't need to hear myself. I don't necessarily like the sound of my voice. Welcome to, I guess we're going to come out of pre-show much quicker than we thought we were going to. I thought I might be in pre-show for 10 minutes this morning, but that's not the case. I've actually been up since about 1:30 this morning, um, thinking about what this was going to be about. What am I going to talk about? Making sure that it was in line with other things that I might be posting online. And so I went and I reread what today's blog article is and what tomorrow's is and what the weekends were, what yesterday's was. Well, actually, I knew what yesterday's was because it's always part of the calibration series, is what um, Mondays always are, where we kind of talk about that alignment that needs to exist between parent and player and coach, and making sure that they're reading things the same way, right? And I think it's important that we look at it as that they each bring their own thoughts to the table, and that everybody else understands that perspective, rather than everybody that we're in groupthink and everybody thinks the same. No, I think we need to be calibrating to where everybody understands the other person's perspective. So if we have a coach who's thinking mostly about, strokes or decision making and all of that, and we have a parent that looks at, parents tend to look at things a little closer than other people. We tend to know when our kid is upset. We tend to think that our kid is acting in a certain way when nobody else sees it, right? This little subtleties, but because we've been so in tune to them for so long. And then player who might be thinking of themselves as inadequate, or they might be thinking of themselves as, I'm the greatest. And maybe I'm letting people down. And so people are investing in me. My parents are investing resources in me. They're driving me around. They're paying for my lessons, and I'm disappointing them. Or a coach who is very much in my corner. I'm letting them down because they've worked so hard to get me to a certain place, and I'm not performing on this day. And maybe I feel like I'm letting them down, and that extra bit of pressure is the thing which is degrading my performance. So I need to be calibrating all of those things all the time. And so I think that's an important place where, when we're in debrief mode, so of the IEDE, so what is my intention, and then what's the actual experience, and then debrief, figure out what happened. Everybody kind of gets on the same page about it, that during debrief, that everybody perspective is known, and we can help, if the kid's feeling pressure for no known reason, and that we get what it is. And I'm a believer that all emotions are legitimate, right? If we feel it, it's legitimate because they're emotions, and everybody's entitled to have emotions. So you can't tell somebody, well, you shouldn't feel that way. It's like, go, shut up, dude, go away. Um, that's my belief. When somebody says you shouldn't feel that way, just tell them to go away. That wasn't the subject for today, though. The subject for today was, we see what we look for. So training our eyes and our mind to see certain things. It happens unconsciously, but if we work at something, we learn how to do it, right? So I think back to 1997, and unfortunately, a couple things happened. My mom passed away early in the year, and then my first child was born in July. But when my mom passed away, I got an inheritance, and I was thinking about what do I do with it, and I wanted to buy a car. And so I knew the level of car that I wanted, the somewhat luxury but not high-end luxury sedan. And at the time, the most popular car probably in America at that level, so we're going above the Toyota Camry. I think Toyota Camry was probably the most popular, but was the upgrade Toyota, right? The Lexus um, LS 300, LS 300, GS 300. I don't remember which one it was, but I didn't want that because they were everywhere, right? So you look around and you can't help but notice it, and you know, felt like I didn't want to be part of Stepford. I didn't want to, everybody dresses the same, everybody drives the same car, everybody. I didn't want to be that, so I picked an Infiniti i30, right? So that was the same level of car, but it wasn't the one that I saw everywhere. It was one that I felt like I didn't see hardly anywhere. Well, lo and behold, I go out and I buy this Infiniti i30, and what do I start noticing at every stoplight, in every parking lot, everywhere I went? Infiniti i30s. Not only Infiniti i30s, but I saw white ones, just like the one that I had, and those became the thing that I saw. Well, why? Because my mind was tuned to it. So I saw what it was I was looking for. And at that point in time, I didn't know I was looking for it, but I was. And so that's what I saw. Same thing happens, with me now with work. I'm trained myself to look for patterns of communication between parents, players, coaches, and to look at it from those different perspectives and see where the communication's breaking down. And particularly, I really look for when somebody's performance state degrades. And so I can watch the Olympics, and it's actually interesting watching the Olympics and seeing when someone's performance state degrades, and then how could they have trained it, and then how did they train it, and how did it break down. And I looked at, the quad god and him breaking down, and he even admitted that he broke down, right? He talked about it, that the pressure just built up and it got to him. And, he's still really young guy, but he hadn't lost in 2 years, right? So I'm not sure we would have had a way to train it when it looks like, yeah, he's rock solid mental toughness wise. If we were to look at it, it certainly took a lot for him to break down. And we hit that moment, but there was no way to train it because there was no way to simulate um, that much pressure over that much time. Hopefully, he'll learn from it, and then he'll figure out, well, where did it break down and how did it break down and what did he feel going into it, and come up with some coping mechanisms. But it was, world championships, whatever, 2 years, hadn't lost. So who knows? But we see what we're looking for. And so one of the things that I thinking of is when we're talking about junior players, why should we enroll them in IEDE specifically and go through it? Um, well, because if they know they're going to be asked about something afterwards, because it is the routine, right? I write out what my intentions are at Austin Tennis Academy. They call it a match card, and so making that match card specifically for what my intentions are. Here's what I want to do and have happen, and then go through the experience, but going through the experience with the knowledge that I'm going to be asked about it afterwards, because the debrief is just part of what we do. And so come back and going to be looking at it. So in real time, brain starts logging the things that are going to be asked about. I received an email from a parent, I guess yesterday, day before yesterday, where they were talking about their child's experience over the weekend, and that the discussions led to some pretty good insight of what happened, and the child being aware of what happened in their tournament matches. Um, and I guess then my question becomes, what are the places where performance held and where did performance break? And then when you recognize those, what coping mechanisms, blah, 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 easy for me to say, right? What coping mechanisms are in place? Because as I received the email, there were some times when performance kind of broke. And so now becomes the learning time. So why do we do debrief? That because we want to figure out, well, where do we train? Okay, so, and what was it? Was it um, something that took a long time to break? Or did it, when it broke, did it really break down and just fell apart and um, stayed apart for a long time? Or did it come back to what it was pretty quick, and then what was the end? And this isn't the case in this particular match or situation that I was told about, but what happens when you have set point at 5-3 in the first set, and then somehow the set escapes you? um, what what was that happened at set point and that caused you to break, and how did you break? And now, did you reset once the second set came? So that was something that, as you're unraveling, unraveling, and now the set's over, you finally lost it, and now because you're no longer in your own mind choking, that was the release valve that, okay, no more pressure, and now I can come back and I can function again. And so did you then respond differently when the same thing happened in the second set? So you were up again, had set point, lost set point, and did that cause another unravel? Or did you say, okay, this isn't happening again. What am I doing differently this time? What was my response the first time? How am I better for it, or worse for it, right? So I can tell over time. I've heard who knows how many kids say out loud, I'm choking again, or during debrief talking to kids after tournament matches, when it wasn't specific, it was just talking to kids after their matches, right? It wasn't part of a specific system that I had developed, but the system developed around it. But talking to kids and them saying, I haven't won a third set tiebreaker in however long. So what were they probably thinking about when they were playing third set tiebreaker? It wasn't the fact that I should be attacking their weakness, or they're choking, so I should be allowing them to choke, or whatever happens be happening in that match. And undoubtedly, the mind is no longer present. The mind is operating in the past of, here we go again. Another third set tiebreak. I get behind. Yep, I'm going to lose another third set tiebreak. And we create what I think we all know as a self-fulfilling prophecy. We believe it's going to happen, and somehow we make it so. So how do we come up with, that's our critical situation, right? So how do we, and I have a tool available on my website for people to work through what, those critical situations, what's happening, and then what should my response be, that it's happened enough times and we've worked on it, and what should it be? So there's the opportunity, right? And so I think it's really important and vital and critically valuable to go through that, because then what we're doing is we're informing, after the debrief, we're informing where our training goes next. And those things are coming directly from the match court. So we're not just training some arbitrary thing that this week we're training how to defend off your backhand side, or we're training how to move through the midcourt in a specific footwork move, or whatever it is. We're taking something which came directly from the debrief, So taking what happened on our experience and we looked at it and we said, okay, this is happening. And it's happening enough over a period of time that if it's not already in our development plan of this is what we're going to work on during this period of time, that we add it into the development plan. Because our development plan should be a living document, while we should look and say, for the next year, here's what we're going to be doing. Here are our training blocks. Here's what we hope to be doing during those training blocks, because we've prioritized strengths and weaknesses and where we are in our competition schedule, and all of those things that go into a development plan. But we've got to be able to change it. It's not something that we just look at and, okay, oh, here's what we're supposed to be doing this next 3 months. It's reviewing how did things work over this past period of time. Is it time to leave it alone because the bottleneck that exists in our performance has moved to somewhere else? So we've released the bottleneck that we were working on that was keeping performance from moving, and now it's better, right? So maybe our ground strokes had become really good, and what we were doing is recognizing that we have the advantage and we're now transitioning to come forward. And so that's what we're working on during this training block. And possibly we've removed that bottleneck, that there's no longer, if we were doing this simple chart, CDIEW, you know, could the person have done it? Did they do it? And so now we're getting checks in both of those boxes, which are the two decision-making boxes. And now we're in, was it effective, and did you win? So those are the execution type boxes. And so we're getting checks in the two decision boxes. We're breaking down somewhere, or we were breaking down somewhere in the execution boxes. So we've trained it in this training block and was to work on that. And we come back and we look and we say, great, now making great decisions. And so we've removed that bottleneck, which has us, oh, we're playing too many long matches. We have a propensity, we're cramping, and all those things. No longer doing that. We've shortened up the points enough because we're recognizing that, but now what's happening? Our volleys aren't effective, and so maybe they're not even going in. They can't hit in the center of the frame, and so it flubs off and falls to the ground or whatever it happens to be. And so now that's the place that becomes the new constraint, the new bottleneck. And so we're now go and we work on that. But maybe we got through the one of the transitions and we get up there and our volleys were really good. And so now we got to look and we got to figure out, where is the bottleneck? Where's the constraint? What do we need to work on? And I say it as I just said it because that's often the case, right? So my tennis program for couple decades was Midcourt Tennis Academy. And I named it Midcourt because what I found was, when pretty high level players, so 100 in the country, 80 in the country, were sent to me for evaluation, what I found was their ground strokes were amazing. Their net game was amazing. And then I had them play points, and sure enough, they couldn't get from the baseline to the net. And so we had to work on the midcourt. So, sometimes if the midcourt is what our training block is and we get through that, the bottleneck doesn't necessarily move to the volleys and overhead, so the forecourt play. It goes to something else, whatever that something else could be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be technical or tactical, right? It can be physical or it can be psychological. And in a lot of cases, when we're talking about younger kids, I'm giving a lot of information right here, just kind of just diarrhea of the mouth, so to speak. A lot of the things that coaches and parents think of as technical in young kids are actually physical, particularly when we talk about things like serve and being able to hold trophy poses and certain rotational things. It's not a technique thing. You can train technique forever and ever and ever, but it, oftentimes is a weakness in the core or hip stability, which causes, particularly in girls, causes the knees to buckle inward at certain times. So needing to train that physical component of it. But it could be any of the four performance pillars, right? So technical, tactical, physical, psychological. Can be any of those. Could be the next bottleneck, the next constraint, the next thing which keeps the player's performance from reaching a higher level. But if player knows that's what they're going to be trying to figure out afterwards, they're going to start noticing that stuff during competition, right? They train them to look for those things which are happening. And the young man that I'm talking about has had enough discussions, and they're real early in this process, that he was aware the discussions were going to happen. He became more in tune to it in real time and was able to have those conversations without it being judgmental, um, which is kind of the key. If you know these things are coming and it's not a parent's going to yell at me, coach is going to yell at me, I'm going to be berated. It is a calm, systematic process that you go through, and you can remove a lot of the emotion which clouds judgment. Um, that's key. That's key. So that's my belief of why you should formally be implementing IEDE as opposed to it's just a casual thing. If you know that you're going to have to do that. If you're a coach, easy thing. Um, have the player call you after matches. Duh, we all do that, right? Maybe we don't all do that, but many coaches want players to call them after their matches. Here's the key: get the player to learn to talk to you in such a way that you can have an 8-minute conversation with them when they call after a match. And at the end of 8 minutes, you need to say, did you win or did you lose? Like, you don't know that they're talking about performance and without the emotional overtone that goes along with it. And so if you can do that, you've now hit a key milestone. But they got to know it's going to happen, and they got to know it's going to happen every time, and they've got to not avoid the phone call, because so often you hear the kid that calls all the time when they win, and then you don't hear from them after they lose. Get them to understand it's a process. And the key is it's a process that's going to travel, right? So it will be with them for forever as they learn to assess in real time and take notes of things, and they will take it with them into adulthood, into whatever the profession that they choose to go into their relationships with significant others, with their children, when they have children of their own, um, yeah, with friends. It's important, and it travels. So that's what I have for today. Where are we time wise? Yeah, I think I had like a 3 minute pre-show, and that's the 20-minute mark. So I gotta say thank you for being here. Nobody came in and chatted, but that's because I didn't promote it ahead of time. See, you're watching the replay. I appreciate you. Here every Tuesday, 5:30 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 a.m. on the East Coast, and really, really early. Maybe got to stay up and catch me at 3:30 a.m. on the West Coast. I don't know a lot of people in Mountain Time Zone that might tune into this, though there are a couple because I spent a little bit of time in Colorado. Um, but that's the end. That's all we got. And yeah, wish you the best. Be well.